The silver arrow tears through flesh with a whisper, and Emily's hands shake as she presses the bloodied cloth against the stranger's shoulder. His skin burns fever-hot beneath her palms, yet his eyes, those impossible golden eyes, watch her with a clarity that shouldn't exist in someone so close to death. The wound beneath her fingers pulses with something darker than blood, something that makes her stomach clench with recognition she cannot name. She had been gathering herbs in the pre-dawn mist when she found him collapsed against the old oak tree, his breathing shallow and labored. 3 arrows protruded from his back and shoulder, their silver tips gleaming with an unnatural light that made her eyes water to look upon. Any sensible woman would have run. Any God-fearing woman would have called for the village men. But Emily Hartwell had buried her husband 6 months ago, had watched the life drain from his eyes while she held him just like this, and she could not, would not, let another soul slip away under her watch. "You shouldn't have brought me here," the stranger whispers, his voice rough as gravel. "They'll come for me. They'll come for you." Emily's cottage sits at the village's edge, where the forest meets civilization in an uneasy truce. She had chosen this isolation after Robert's death, when the pitying stares and whispered condolences became unbearable. Now that solitude serves a different purpose. No neighbors to see her drag a bleeding man through her doorway. No witnesses to the way his wounds seem to smoke when she washes them with blessed water from the church well. "Let me worry about that," she says, though her hands tremble as she cuts away his torn shirt. The fabric falls away to reveal scars that map a lifetime of violence, claw marks, bite wounds, burns that speak of battles fought in darkness. But it's the 3 fresh wounds that command her attention, their edges blackened and festering despite the care she's given them. The stranger, Thomas, he had gasped when she asked his name, watches her work with an intensity that makes her skin prickle. His eyes track every movement of her hands, every shift of her expression, as if he's memorizing her face. When she accidentally brushes against his bare chest while reaching for fresh bandages, his sharp intake of breath echoes her own. "You're not afraid," he observes, and there's wonder in his voice. Emily pauses in her ministrations, meeting those golden eyes directly. "I buried my husband in the spring, watched consumption eat him alive over 3 long months. I held his hand while he coughed up blood and begged God to take him. After that..." She returns to cleaning his wounds, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "After that, there's very little left in this world that can frighten me." But that's not entirely true. The way Thomas's skin seems to shimmer in the lamplight frightens her. The way his wounds refuse to heal properly despite her best efforts frightens her. The way her heart races when he looks at her, really looks at her, as if seeing something precious and fragile, that frightens her most of all. The silver arrows lie on her kitchen table like accusations. She had pulled them from his flesh one by one, each extraction drawing sounds from him that no human throat should make. The arrowheads had burned her fingers even through thick cloth, leaving blisters that still throb hours later. She knows what silver means in the old stories, the tales her grandmother whispered by winter fires. But those are just stories, aren't they? Thomas shifts on her narrow bed, trying to sit up despite her protests. "Listen to me, Emily." The way he says her name, soft and reverent, as if it's something sacred, stops her arguments cold. "I am not what you think I am. I am not what any human should help or harbor or heal." "Then what are you?" The question slips out before she can stop it, hanging in the air between them like a challenge. He studies her face for a long moment, those impossible eyes searching for something. Fear, perhaps, or disgust, or the kind of horror that would send her running into the night. Instead, he finds only Robert's widow, a woman who has already stared death in the face and found herself still standing. "I am the last," he says finally. the last of something that should have died out centuries ago. My pack is gone. My territory is lost. I am being hunted by men who know exactly what I am and exactly how to kill me. His hand moves to cover hers where it rests on his chest, his skin burning with unnatural heat. I am a monster, Emily Hartwell, and you have just saved my life. The confession should terrify her, should send her scrambling for the door, for the church bell, for anything that might summon help against the creature in her bed. Instead, Emily feels something settle into place deep in her chest, a recognition that feels older than thought, older than fear. My Robert used to say that monsters are made, not born, she says quietly. That circumstances and cruelty shape us into things we never meant to become. Her fingers curl around his, noting how perfectly they fit together despite everything that should make them enemies. He said the real monsters are the ones who choose cruelty when they could choose kindness. Thomas's eyes widen as if her words have struck something deep within him. You don't understand what you're risking, what they'll do to you if they find me here. Then we make sure they don't find you. The words surprised them both. Emily had not planned to say them, had not even consciously decided to make such an offer. But looking at Thomas, wounded and hunted and desperately alone, she knows with bone-deep certainty that turning him away is impossible. Whatever he is, whatever he's done, he had crawled to her doorstep seeking refuge. How could she offer anything less? Outside, the wind picks up, rattling the shutters with increasing urgency. Thomas tenses, his head turning toward the sound like a hound catching scent. They're close, he breathes. The hunters. They track by blood and fear, and I've left them plenty of both. Emily moves to the window, peering through the gap in the curtains. The village lies quiet in the pre-dawn darkness, but there's something wrong with the silence. Too complete, too waiting. Even Mrs. Patterson's rooster, reliable as sunrise for the past decade, makes no sound. How long do we have? She asks, already moving toward her late husband's chest, pulling out the hunting rifle Robert had used for deer and the occasional wolf that wandered too close to the chicken coop. You can't fight them with that, Thomas says, struggling to sit up despite the obvious pain it costs him. Silver bullets, blessed weapons, men who've been hunting my kind for generations. This isn't your battle, Emily. She turns to face him, the rifle steady in her hands, her chin lifted with the same stubborn determination that had seen her through Robert's final months and the lonely months after. You made it my battle when you trusted me enough to let me help you, when you told me the truth instead of lying to save yourself. She checks the rifle's chamber, muscle memory guiding her movements. Besides, you're wrong about one thing. What's that? Emily meets his golden eyes, seeing in them the same desperate loneliness that has haunted her own reflection since Robert's death. This isn't about what you are, Thomas. This is about who you choose to be. And right now, you're choosing to be someone worth fighting for. The journal in her apron pocket. Robert's journal, filled with his careful observations of the forest's strange inhabitants, seems to pulse against her hip like a second heartbeat. She had found it only this morning while searching for herbs, had read just enough to understand that her husband had known far more about the village's secrets than he had ever let on. That knowledge had led her to the wounded stranger, had prepared her mind for truths that should have been impossible to accept. Now, with dawn approaching and danger closing in, Emily Hartwell stands between her wounded guest and whatever forces hunt him, a rifle in her hands and a choice in her heart that will change everything she thought she knew about monsters, about mercy, and about the strange alchemy that transforms strangers into sanctuary. The worn journal snaps shut, its secrets no longer silent, as a determined matriarch makes a call that will change everything. The past is not buried. It's simply waiting to be unearthed. The first hunter's boot crunches through the frost-brittle leaves at the forest's edge, just as Emily slides the last silver-tipped cartridge into Robert's old rifle. Her hands move with practiced efficiency, muscle memory from countless mornings when her husband had taught her to load and fire, back when their greatest concern was deer in the vegetable garden. Now she chambers a round that could kill a man, or something that wears a man's face. Thomas attempts to rise from the bed, his golden eyes tracking the sound of approaching footsteps. Emily, you have to run, now, while there's still time. Blood seeps through the fresh bandages she applied only hours ago, dark stains spreading across the white cloth like spilled wine. They'll torture you for information. They'll make you watch while they... Hush! The word cuts through his protests with gentle authority. Emily positions herself by the window, rifle barrel resting against the sill, her finger finding the trigger with disturbing ease. I've made my choice. Through the gap in the curtains, she counts 3 figures moving through her vegetable garden with the careful precision of men who have done this before. Their faces remain hidden beneath dark hoods, but moonlight catches the gleam of silver weapons. Crossbows, blades, something that might be a net woven with metallic thread. They fan out around her cottage with military efficiency, cutting off escape routes she hadn't even considered. The leader raises his hand, and his companions freeze. Emily's breath catches as he lifts his head, nostrils flaring like an animal testing the air. When he turns toward her window, she sees eyes that reflect the moonlight with an unnatural shine, not gold like Thomas's, but silver white and utterly cold. Hybrid, Thomas breathes, the single word carrying the weight of a death sentence. They're using our own kind against us. The revelation hits Emily like cold water. These aren't just men with silver weapons and ancient knowledge. They're something else. Something that bridges the gap between human and whatever Thomas truly is. The hybrid's gaze finds her window, and his lips curve in a smile that promises unspeakable things. A soft knock echoes through the cottage, polite and utterly wrong in its normalcy. Mrs. Hartwell? The voice carries the refined accent of education and breeding. I do apologize for the early hour, but we have reason to believe you may be harboring a dangerous fugitive. Emily's grip tightens on the rifle. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. Amusement colors the stranger's tone. Perhaps we might come in and discuss this like civilized people? I'm afraid our quarry is quite injured and in desperate need of medical attention. Surely a woman of your compassion wouldn't deny aid to a wounded creature? The manipulation is subtle, but unmistakable. They know exactly what they're doing, playing on the very qualities that led her to help Thomas in the first place. Emily glances back at him, noting how his entire body has gone rigid with tension, every muscle coiled for violence despite his injuries. I'm sorry, but I'm not receiving visitors at this hour, she calls back, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. Perhaps you might return in the morning? Silence stretches taut as a bowstring. Then comes the sound of wood splintering as the front door explodes inward, torn from its hinges by inhuman strength. The hybrid steps through the wreckage with casual grace, his pale eyes scanning the cottage's interior with predatory interest. How disappointing, he murmurs, brushing splinters from his dark coat. I had hoped we might handle this with dignity. Emily fires without hesitation, the rifle's report deafening in the confined space. The bullet takes the hybrid center mass, spinning him backward into the doorframe. But instead of falling, he looks down at the spreading crimson stain on his chest with mild curiosity, then raises his gaze to meet hers with something that might be approval. Silver, he observes, pressing fingers to the wound and examining the blood that comes away. How very prepared of you, Mrs. Hartwell. Though I'm afraid it will take considerably more than that to stop me. The wound is already closing, flesh knitting itself back together with nauseating speed. Emily works the rifle's bolt action, chambering another round, but her hands shake now with the knowledge that her best weapon might as well be a child's toy. Thomas struggles to his feet, swaying but determined. Marcus. The name falls like a stone into still water. I should have known they'd send you. The hybrid, Marcus, turns toward the bedroom with genuine warmth in his expression. Thomas, you look terrible, old friend, though I suppose 3 silver arrows will do that to a body. He steps further into the cottage, seemingly unbothered by the rifle Emily keeps trained on him. The council sends their regards, by the way. They're quite eager to discuss your recent philosophical differences. The council can burn in hell. Marcus laughs, a sound like breaking glass. Such language, and in front of a lady, no less. His attention returns to Emily, studying her with uncomfortable intensity. You know, Mrs. Hartwell, Thomas hasn't told you the whole truth about what he is, about what we are. Would you like to know what manner of creature you've welcomed into your bed? Heat floods Emily's cheeks at the implication, but she keeps the rifle steady. I know enough. Do you? Did he mention that he's killed more humans than I have fingers to count? That his pack terrorized 3 counties before the council finally decided they'd gone too far? Marcus circles closer, his movements fluid and hypnotic. Did he tell you about the children, Emily? The families torn apart by creatures just like him? Stop. Thomas's voice carries a note of anguish that cuts through Emily's chest like a blade. She doesn't need to hear this. But Marcus continues, relentless in his psychological assault. There was a village, not unlike this one, peaceful farming folk who wanted nothing more than to tend their crops and raise their children. Thomas's pack descended on them like a plague, leaving nothing but blood and bone, and Emily's second shot takes Marcus in the throat, silencing his words in a spray of crimson. This time he staggers, one hand pressed to his neck as blood pours between his fingers. But even as she watches, the wound begins to heal, flesh reconnecting with that same disturbing efficiency. Enough, she says quietly. Whatever he was, whatever he did, that's between him and God. Right now, he's a wounded man who came to me for help. That's all I need to know. Something shifts in Thomas's expression, a light kindling behind the pain and exhaustion. He straightens despite his injuries, drawing strength from her unwavering support. Marcus removes his hand from his throat, the skin now unmarked except for bloodstains. How touching. But I'm afraid your loyalty is somewhat misplaced, Mrs. Hartwell. You see, Thomas isn't just any rogue werewolf. He's the last of the Shadowmere pack, the most vicious killers our kind has ever produced. The bounty on his head could buy your entire village twice over. Then I suppose you'd better collect it somewhere else. Emily's calm response clearly wasn't what Marcus expected. His pale eyes narrow, studying her with new interest. You're not afraid of him. Even knowing what he is, what he's done. Fascinating. He takes another step closer, and this time Thomas moves to intercept him despite his wounds. Stay away from her, Marcus. This is between us. Is it? The hybrid's gaze flicks between them, noting the protective stance Thomas has taken, the way Emily positions herself to cover his blind spots. How very domestic. Tell me, Thomas, does she know about the bond? What bond? Emily asks before she can stop herself. Thomas goes very still. It's nothing. Marcus is trying to distract us. But Marcus smiles with genuine delight. Oh, it's far from nothing. You see, Mrs. Hartwell, when one of our kind finds their mate, their true mate, chosen by forces older than civilization itself, certain connections form. Supernatural connections that transcend death, distance, even species barriers. His voice drops to a whisper. Thomas has claimed you, Emily, marked you as his own in ways you can't possibly understand. The words hit Emily like a physical blow. She feels Thomas's eyes on her, burning with something between hope and desperation, and suddenly so many things make sense. The way her heart raced when she first saw him, the perfect fit of their hands together, the bone-deep certainty that she could not, would not, let him die. "Is it true?" she whispers. Thomas closes his eyes as if her question causes him physical pain. "I never meant for it to happen. I was dying, and you were so kind, so gentle. The bond just formed. I couldn't stop it. Could I have stopped it? No." The admission comes out broken. Once it begins, it's beyond either of our control. You're tied to me now, Emily. Forever. Even if they kill me. Tonight, you'll feel the loss of it until the day you die. Marcus claps slowly, mockingly. How romantic. But I'm afraid it also makes Mrs. Hartwell a legitimate target. Council law is quite clear on the matter of human mates. They're considered complicit. The implications crash over Emily like a cold wave. She isn't just harboring a fugitive anymore. According to these people, these creatures, she's become something else entirely. Property, evidence, a crime that walks on two legs. "You bastard," Thomas snarls, but his rage is directed at Marcus, not at the bond he never chose to create. "I prefer thorough," Marcus replies, "though I admit, this does complicate things. The council specifically wanted you alive, Thomas. Something about extracting information regarding other surviving pack members. But Mrs. Hartwell's involvement changes the parameters somewhat." Emily finds her voice, though it comes out steadier than she feels. "What does that mean?" "It means, my dear, that you're both going to die tonight. The only question is how much you suffer first." The casual pronouncement of their death sentence hangs in the air like smoke. Emily feels something fundamental shift inside her chest, a settling of resolve that reminds her of those final nights with Robert, when she knew death was coming and decided to meet it on her own terms. "Then I suppose we'd better make it expensive for you." She fires her third shot, not at Marcus but at the oil lamp hanging from the ceiling beam. Glass and burning oil rain down across the cottage's interior, turning furniture and floorboards into an instant inferno. Marcus leaps backward with inhuman speed, but the flames catch the edge of his coat, and his curse carries a note of genuine alarm. "Thomas, can you run?" Emily asks, already moving toward the cottage's back door. "Emily, the fire. Robert always said this place was too small anyway. Besides," she glances back at him with a smile that transforms her entire face, "I think it's time I stopped hiding at the edge of the world." They stumble out into the pre-dawn darkness as flames engulf her home. Emily doesn't look back. Behind them, Marcus's roars of rage mix with the crackle of burning wood, but ahead lies the forest, vast, dark, and full of places where wounded creatures might find sanctuary. Thomas's hand finds hers as they run, his fingers interlacing with hers in a grip that speaks of desperation and gratitude, and something deeper than words. The bond between them pulses with shared determination, transforming two isolated souls into something stronger than the sum of their parts. "Where do we go?" Emily asks, her breath coming in sharp puffs in the cold air. "There's a place," Thomas replies, his golden eyes scanning the tree line for pursuit. "Sacred ground, older than human memory. If we can reach it before dawn." Behind them, the cottage collapses into itself with a sound like breaking bones. Emily's entire adult life, her marriage, her widowhood, her careful isolation, dies in those flames. But running beside this wounded stranger who has become something precious beyond explanation, she feels more alive than she has in months. The first hint of dawn touches the eastern horizon as they plunge into the forest's embrace. Somewhere in the darkness behind them, Marcus and his companions give chase, their inhuman senses tracking blood and fear, and the supernatural signature of a bond they will kill to sever. But Emily Hartwell, who buried her husband in spring and found her heart again in autumn, runs toward an uncertain future with a rifle in her hands and a werewolf's fate braided through her own. The past is behind them, burning like a funeral pyre. Whatever comes next, they will face it together. With their world shattered by betrayal and their lives hanging by a thread, the matriarch and grandson stand at the precipice. There's no turning back. Only a desperate, defiant leap into the unknown can bring the truth to light. The sacred grove lies hidden in the forest's heart, where ancient stones form a circle older than memory, and the very air thrums with protective power. Emily feels it the moment they cross the threshold, a settling in her bones, a whisper that speaks of sanctuary earned through suffering. Thomas collapses against one of the weathered monoliths, his breathing ragged but no longer desperate. Here, in this place where moonlight pools like molten silver between the standing stones, even the bond between them seems to pulse with renewed strength. They can't follow us here, Thomas explains, pressing his palm against the carved symbols that spiral up the stone's surface. This ground was consecrated long before the council existed, before humans learned to fear what they couldn't understand. His golden eyes find hers across the sacred space. But Emily, we can't stay forever. Eventually. Eventually is a problem for another day. Emily sets down the rifle and moves to examine his wounds in the grove's ethereal light. The silver arrow's damage has finally begun to heal properly, flesh knitting clean and whole for the first time since she pulled those cursed points from his body. Right now, you need rest, and I need to understand what we're truly up against. She settles beside him on the moss-covered ground, her back against the ancient stone. In the distance, she can hear Marcus and his hunters prowling the forest's edge, their frustrated snarls carrying on the pre-dawn wind. But they dare not enter the grove, held back by laws older than their authority. The council, Thomas begins, his voice heavy with old pain, was formed centuries ago to police our kind, to ensure that werewolves remained hidden from human sight, that we followed their rigid codes of conduct. His hand finds hers, fingers intertwining with practiced ease. My pack. We refused to bow to their restrictions. We believed that hiding was cowardice, that we had every right to claim territory and hunt as nature intended. Emily listens without judgment, her thumb tracing gentle circles across his knuckles. She has seen enough of life to know that truth rarely comes in simple shapes, that monsters and heroes often wear each other's faces. The village Marcus mentioned, Thomas continues, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. It's true. We killed innocents. Children. The confession tears from him like flesh from bone. I told myself we were protecting our territory, that humans were invaders who needed to be driven out. But the truth is, Emily, I was angry. Angry at a world that demanded I hide what I was. Angry at the council for treating us like criminals. Angry at fate for making me into something that could never truly belong anywhere. And now? Thomas meets her gaze, and in his golden eyes she sees the same bone-deep weariness that has haunted her own reflection since Robert's death. Now I know that anger without purpose is just destruction wearing a noble mask. That strength without compassion makes us into the very monsters we claim to fight against. His free hand rises to cup her cheek, touch feather light against her skin. You changed everything, Emily. Your kindness, your courage. You showed me what I could be instead of what I'd always been. The words settle into her heart like seeds taking root. Emily has spent months believing herself broken, a widow with nothing left to offer the world. But looking at Thomas, wounded, hunted, yet somehow transformed by their impossible connection, she begins to understand that healing isn't always about returning to what was. Sometimes it's about becoming something entirely new. A howl echoes through the forest, long and mournful, answered by others from different directions. Marcus's patience is wearing thin. His hunters spread wide in an attempt to find some weakness in the grove's ancient protections. There's something else, Thomas says, his grip tightening on her hand. The bond between us. It's not just emotional. When dawn breaks fully, when the sacred ground's power is at its strongest, you'll have a choice to make. What kind of choice? The bond can be completed, made permanent. But Emily. He turns to face her fully, his expression grave with the weight of what he's about to reveal. Completing it would change you. Not into what I am. The magic here won't allow that corruption, but into something between human and other. You'd live longer, heal faster, share my supernatural senses, but you could never go back to your old life, never be fully human again. Emily stares at him, the magnitude of the decision settling over her like a heavy cloak. To choose Thomas completely would mean abandoning not just her cottage and her quiet existence, but her very humanity itself. It would mean joining him in exile, facing whatever enemies hunt them, building a life in the spaces between worlds. And if I don't complete the bond? Pain flickers across Thomas's features. Then it will fade over time. You'll return to your village, to your normal life. The council will likely leave you alone once I'm gone. You'll be safe, Emily. You'll be human. Gone? The word tears from her throat. What do you mean, gone? Thomas's smile carries infinite sadness. I won't ask you to sacrifice your humanity for a monster's love. If you choose to remain as you are, I'll surrender myself to Marcus. Face whatever justice the council demands. At least then you'll be free of this burden I've placed on you. The casual way he speaks of his own death ignites something fierce and protective in Emily's chest. She has already lost one man she cared about to forces beyond her control. She will not lose another to misguided nobility. That's not your choice to make, she says, her voice carrying the authority of someone who has stared down death and found herself still standing. You don't get to decide what's best for me, Thomas. You don't get to sacrifice yourself to ease your conscience. Emily. No. She rises to her feet, pulling him up with her. You want to talk about choices? Then let's talk about mine. I chose to help you when I found you bleeding by that oak tree. I chose to fight for you when the hunters came. I chose to burn down my home and everything I thought I knew about my life. She steps closer, close enough that she can feel the supernatural heat radiating from his skin. And now, I'm choosing you. All of you. Whatever the cost. Thomas's eyes widen, hope and disbelief warring across his features. You don't understand what you're giving up. I understand perfectly. Emily reaches up to frame his face with her hands, forcing him to meet her gaze. I'm giving up loneliness. I'm giving up the half-life I've been living since Robert died. I'm giving up the illusion that safety and humanity are the same thing. Her voice softens, but her resolve remains unshakable. I'm not choosing to become something other than human, Thomas. I'm choosing to become more than I ever imagined I could be. The first rays of true dawn spill through the grove, setting the ancient stones ablaze with golden light. Emily feels the change beginning even before Thomas's lips find hers, a warmth that spreads outward from their joined hands and racing hearts. The kiss tastes of copper and starlight, of promises made in desperation and kept through sheer will. Power flows between them, not the corruption of lycanthropy, but something cleaner, older, born from the sacred ground beneath their feet and the impossible love that brought them together. Emily feels her senses expand, her heartbeat synchronizing with Thomas's, her very soul intertwining with his in ways that transcend flesh and bone. When they break apart, she sees the world through new eyes. Every scent carries meaning, every shadow holds depth, every sound tells a story. She is still herself, still Emily Hartwell, but she is also something more. A bridge between worlds, a guardian of the balance between human and other. Emily. Thomas breathes, wonder transforming his entire face. You're magnificent. She laughs, the sound carrying notes she's never heard in her own voice before. I feel alive, she says, and realizes it's the truest thing she's ever spoken. A roar of inhuman rage shatters the morning air as Marcus realizes what has occurred. The completed bond blazes between Emily and Thomas like a beacon, impossible to hide or deny. But instead of fear, Emily feels only fierce satisfaction. Let the council's hunters know what they face now, not just a rogue werewolf and a frightened human, but something new and powerful and utterly unrepentant. They'll never stop hunting us, Thomas warns, though his tone carries hope instead of despair. Then we'd better make sure we're worth the chase. Emily retrieves the rifle, checking its remaining ammunition with movements that seem supernaturally graceful. Besides, I have a feeling we won't be alone for long. As if summoned by her words, new howls echo through the forest, but these carry a different note entirely. Not the controlled harmony of Marcus's hunters, but the wild, defiant song of creatures who have chosen freedom over safety, love over law. Thomas's eyes widen with recognition and impossible hope. The others, the survivors I thought were dead. Your pack? Emily asks. What's left of it? And others like us, rogues and exiles who refuse to bow to the council's authority. Thomas's grip tightens on her hand as the howls grow closer. They've been waiting for someone to make a stand. Someone to prove that we don't have to live in the shadows anymore. Emily smiles, feeling the weight of leadership settle onto her shoulders like a mantle she was born to wear. She understands now why the bond chose her, why fate led a dying werewolf to her doorstep. Not just to save one lost creature, but to become something the supernatural world has never seen. A human who stands as equal partner to the other, a bridge between species that have been enemies for too long. The first of the survivors emerges from the tree line, a woman with silver-streaked hair and eyes like frozen lakes, followed by a young man whose scars speak of recent battles with the council's forces. Then more, a dozen outcasts and rogues drawn by the beacon of the completed bond and the promise it represents. Marcus's hunters fall back as the grove fills with creatures who have spent years running, hiding, surviving on the margins of a world that wants them dead or controlled. But now they stand together, united by the impossible sight of human and werewolf bound not by dominance or submission, but by choice, freely given and love fearlessly claimed. You cannot protect them all, Marcus shouts from beyond the sacred boundary, his voice carrying equal parts rage and desperation. The council will send armies. They will burn this entire forest to ash before they allow this abomination to spread. Emily steps forward, the rifle cradled in her arms like a promise, her enhanced senses cataloging every weakness in her enemy's positions. When she speaks, her voice carries across the forest with supernatural clarity, reaching not just Marcus, but every creature within miles who has ears to hear. Then tell your council this, she calls back, her tone ringing with absolute conviction. Tell them that Emily Hartwell, widow of Robert, daughter of this land, stands with the outcasts they've cast aside. Tell them that we claim this sacred ground as sanctuary for any who seek it, human or other, and we will defend it with our lives. She pauses, letting the weight of her declaration settle over the assembled crowd. And tell them that if they want a war, they'd better bring more than silver arrows and hired killers. Because they're not facing monsters anymore. They're facing family. The grove erupts in howls of agreement, voices raised in harmony that speaks of found purpose and reclaimed hope. Emily feels the sound resonate in her bones, binding her not just to Thomas but to every creature who has chosen love over fear, unity over isolation. As the sun climbs higher, painting the sacred stones gold and crimson, Emily Hartwell stands transformed at the center of something that will change the supernatural world forever. She is no longer the grieving widow who hid at the village's edge, no longer the frightened human who stumbled upon a wounded stranger in the pre-dawn darkness. She is the guardian of the sacred grove, the bridge between worlds, the beating heart of a revolution that will not be denied. And when the Council's armies come, as she knows they will find not scattered rogues and desperate exiles, but a united people fighting for something worth dying for. The future stretches ahead, uncertain and dangerous and absolutely alive with possibility. Emily takes Thomas's hand in hers, feeling their bond pulse with shared strength and unshakable resolve, and steps forward to meet whatever comes next. Together, they are no longer prey. Together, they are something the world has never seen before, and something it will never forget.